So I've been doing a bit of tinkering and elevating my peace of mind. Amici, welcome back to another iteration of TueZday Garage. I'm glad you could make it back. I know it's been a little while, and I've actually got some pretty cool, exciting things to show you. Last time we were together, I talked about closing this out and calling it quits and doing our trip back to the beach. I've been really busy, man. Work has been keeping me busy. I've been doing a lot of traveling for business and also just kind of lining up some things in my life for a couple future moves, I guess you could say. In the meantime, I've been doing some tinkering on the Z, and I haven't captured a lot of it on camera, but I definitely want to share some things with you. So if you remember, one of the last things we talked about on the Z was how we lowered the engine, and we got it sitting in there 3/8 of an inch lower, which has actually proved to be very good. There's a slight bit of rub that you could see that's happening right there, but it is not having any impact on the hood or really on there at all. Now, I want to direct your attention to these bolts right here. Those are not the normal bolts that go into this engine bay. In fact, the normal bolts that go into this engine bay are right here. The bolt itself has this flange on the top. There's actually a 10mm bolt that goes into the top of the frame rail. The reason it's made like this is so you can tighten it at the bottom and the bolt basically doesn't turn at the top. When we lowered the cross member in the front, these bolts just weren't long enough. In fact, if you look really closely at how much thread is barely in that nut, that is actually about the same amount of thread that we actually had on the car once we lowered the engine. Recently, on one of my business trips, I went back to mainland USA, went to a really sweet hardware store, found these grade 8 bolts. Normal bolts from the Z are about 6.5 inches long. I bought some 8-inch long bolts. I'm gonna put up a shot right now to show you the difference. They're quite a bit longer. I'll also put up the dimensions of the bolts that I got. Now we actually have way more bolt underneath the car that the nut is now bit onto. We've got way more peace of mind. And really everything I've been doing lately is about peace of mind. Let me also show you one other thing that is now new to the car. You can see right here above the battery. That is the Wideband O2 sensor controller. It's an AEM unit, and you just wire this particular wideband right into the ECU. And speaking of the ECU and in the car, let me show you that because I don't think I ever showed this to you. Down here in the ECU area, one of the great things about the Wiring Specialties harness is that it actually puts the power transistor unit and the step resistor for the injectors inside the car so they don't have to sit in the bay, and specifically the PTU sitting on top of the actual engine itself. So you can see how I positioned it all in here, going from left to right. That is the relay for our fan. Then we have the ECU, then we have the PTU, and then the step resistor for the injectors themselves. The cover is off the wiring harness right there because I've recently done some extra wiring, and in the course of that I found a small problem that I want to address with you guys and bring to your attention. So the main reason why I uncovered the ECU, over here on the side is the actual auxiliary in for the Haltech ECU. And this allows us to wire in and wire out several different things. So already over here we have our boost control. We also have our radiator fan. And if you look at those brown and white wires now, those are the wideband O2 sensor that's actually wired into the ECU. So once I wired those in, all I do is log into the ECU, I tell it there is a wideband that's coming into it, and I direct it to be the primary source in the exhaust. So good, so fine. I wanted to also keep an eye on the rear bank of cylinders. So to do that, I wanted to use the narrow band, and I had to find the right pins, which for this ECU is pins 29 for the rear bank and 55 for the front bank. And that's when I discovered another small issue. So the RB has 2 banks, obviously, right? Being a twin turbo. Now, if you convert it to a single turbo, then you're not gonna have this problem, but you have 3 cylinders that feed the front turbo, 3 cylinders that feed the back turbo, and each set of those cylinders has an oxygen sensor. You can see one there, and then there's one hiding down in there. While the oxygen sensors look exactly the same, the plugs on the end of them are actually different. One of the plugs looks like a standard flat 3-pin plug that you see on most oxygen sensors, and the other plug it's probably a little more tucked away, is right here. And it's actually like a 2x2 plug. However, there's only 3 pins inside of it. Originally, when I put my oxygen sensors in, I didn't really think that it mattered, and I hooked them up to the engine. And I'll tell you what, even though this car's been running, and it's been running fairly okay, I have been slightly underwhelmed with its performance. It's just felt really sluggish. It's just been smelling like gas, like really, really bad. Like extremely rich, man. And when I really kind of get on it a little bit, it just, I don't know, it doesn't feel responsive. It just doesn't feel responsive at all. It doesn't feel like it really wants to boost. It just smells rich all the time. And I really didn't know what to think of it. Come to find out, when I was trying to find the right pin on the ECU, I couldn't find it on the oxygen sensor. Meaning I was using a multimeter, putting one lead on the ECU pin and putting the other lead on the oxygen sensor pin, and there was no continuity between them. And sure enough, when I changed the lead to the other oxygen sensor, that's when I got continuity. So what does that mean? Yes, I had them hooked up to the computer harness the right way. However, the oxygen sensors were in backwards, meaning the value that the ECU was reading, thinking it was the front of the engine, was the back, and the value that it thought was the back of the engine was the front. Now that's an issue because in the computer it's actually changed to compensate for the shape and form of the intake manifold to supply more fuel to the back than in the front. And so now it's running richer back here but thinking it's supposed to be lean, and it's running leaner up here thinking it's supposed to be rich. And that's where our problem happened. Once I flipped the 2 oxygen sensors around, oh my gosh, Amici. Oh my gosh. The car started like running way better. It wasn't long after that that I had the wideband sensor completely hooked up as well. So I just went ahead and switched over to pure wideband. And guys, we are running at a perfect 14.7 ratio. And the car is amazing. It's not even the same freaking car anymore. It is totally different. It runs like a different engine. It's smooth. It doesn't smell rich. It's boosting like crazy. Like I have to keep it careful because I'm still breaking in miles, but it just wants to go, man. It wants to go, and it sounds so good. It sounds so smooth. It's amazing. Not even the same car. One of the other things I wanted to continue to do, again, it was all about, you know, checking the vitals and keeping a better tab on what's going on with the car. As you can see, I went ahead and installed 3 gauges inside the center console of the car. Now, I talked about these gauges before. These are the Autometer Z series gauges, and they are an actual perfect match for the gauges that are in the cluster. Now, my cluster is actually completely missing right now. It's over with a guy named Gary, also known as DVD Burn MD from twinturbo.net, and he is taking apart my tachometer completely and resoldering it all to get it to work better, because after 25 years, man, that solder starts to break apart. So he is reworking those gauges, and I should have them back soon. The air to fuel ratio sensor that's in right there is only reading the rear bank of cylinders. And why do I want to read just the rear bank of cylinders? Because these are the trouble ones, right? These are the ones that don't get enough coolant. These are the ones that don't get enough fuel. These are the ones that I just want to keep my eye on for right now. And eventually I'll probably figure out something else. Maybe I'll just put a full wideband gauge in there, but for the time being, that's just what I want to keep my eye on. And I've got my computer, my laptop hooked up to the Haltech, so I can actually watch the wideband and keep informed with that one. Unfortunately, I don't yet have the oil pressure or the water temp hooked up yet, because they do require their own sender units. You can't just use the stock sender units. And although I do have a Greddy sandwich plate in here that has 4 ports, so not only can I run the oil cooler, but I can also hook up 2 sensors. I have the stock sensor in the top location, but in the bottom location, the actual engine block itself has a piece of ribbing on it that is in the way of the other sensor. Yeah, here it is right here. It's already set to go on the Greddy nut, but it is in the way. So I'm gonna need to take it apart right in this area, put an elbow on it, and have the sensor sticking straight out, and then we'll be good to go, man. That's kind of been everything that I've been working on, And I just wanted to share this stuff with you because, yeah, again, longer bolts, very necessary. Wideband 02, not as necessary, but has been a huge help. But you have to have the oxygen sensors in a certain orientation. And if I didn't make it perfectly clear, the front one is the 3-prong side by side. The back one is the 2x2 plug. So when you're putting your engine together, the rear oxygen sensors 2x2 plug, the front oxygen sensor is the 3 side by side plug. So make sure you put those in the right way the first time, because I actually couldn't even get the oxygen sensors out. I ended up having to de-pin the plugs and flip-flopping the plugs on the existing wiring because I just couldn't get into the sensors anymore because it's just cluttered and I didn't want to take everything apart. The car is running amazing. I've got the extra gauges in. Now that all these vital signs are at my disposal to be checked, I thought, you know what? There's Lily. That's not what I was thinking. So I think for now, that's about it. I'm actually headed out of town again very soon. I'm going to be gone for a couple weeks, and as soon as I get back, I'm actually registered RBZ into a car show, man. So I'm really excited to see how that happens. They had a bunch of different categories. I could have entered import. I could have entered antique. I chose to enter modified. So let's see how she goes, man. Let's see. I think it's going to be good. I think it's going to be a really good time. Probably the next time we're together, we're definitely going to have some footage from that car show, and it should be a really good time. Also, as I talked about putting the Radium Engineering dual catch cans in, those are on their way very, very soon. That's the next modification I want to make, is the dual catch cans. The next modification beyond that, we are going to upgrade the fuel system, man. It's going to be awesome. Really looking forward to that. Am I forgetting anything?
No.
Nope.
No.
Thanks again for tuning in. I'm here to answer any questions you ever have. Don't hesitate to fire them off to me. You can PM me, you can tweet at me, you can reply in a video. I don't care. I'm here to answer your questions and help the process along. That's all I got. Ciao a tutti and aloha.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.